Oops. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sex with Robin, where we talk about sex, kink, dating, non-monogamy, any and all of that good shit. My name is Robin Beach. I am a former stripper, former pro-dom, former nurse with experience in cardiology, psychology, and sexual health. And what else? It is morning. Good morning. I am located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish and Musqueam Indigenous tribes, colonially known as Vancouver, Canada. And I am with my cat, Togepi, as she is constantly trying to get my attention if I'm paying attention to anything else. Like if I'm on the phone or on the screen, just ask Mandy or any of my clients. Like if I'm doing a video chat, there's a cat that's trying to get involved. I'm also here with Pete the zombie. I decided to bring him into my room / new workspace. But there's clearly some things that need to be done. I got to lower him so you can see him. He's in his summer glamour. And yeah, I've got like a weird background situation going on. I know I promised it'd be all set up. No, what I promised was that I would have a better setup, like audio, video, and stuff like that, so that hopefully I'm not late in the future. It's totally late today. I might always be late. But I did find, of course, that I did too much, so I had to stop. I'm still recovering from a hysterectomy. Well, man, tomorrow will actually be the 4-week mark, so I am doing more. Definitely more than I was right after my surgery, but definitely, like it's a good 6 to 8 week plus. Like I'm not even allowed any kind of vaginal penetration for 8 weeks. So I assume that it's like at 8 weeks, I'm not gonna be like, hey, I'm fully healed, let's go. I'm doing more things. I'm doing like a task and then taking a break and trying to check in with my body a lot. Because I feel like I do have a slight advantage in that I am experienced with chronic pain. I have a ton of like back and hip issues. And I know that I don't always know in the moment if I'm doing too much or not. So I feel like I've become better at doing a task and then stopping and evaluating and seeing, okay, how's my body doing? Because it might not, my pain might not come right away. So I'll be like, oh, and then I'm like, okay, my stitches are kind of achy or something like that, or I get like weird cramps since this hysterectomy. Like, so I'm like, okay, that means I need to rest for a little while. And I did way too much yesterday, and I was like, okay, I'm like in pain now. I definitely did too much. So this is what you got. And now you've got the cat knocking the camera. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. I love you all. And yeah, so today we're going to be talking about kink in media. This is not the first time I've discussed this, and it won't be the last. I really am a big like movie and TV person, and or books. Like I just love stories. I actually have like, it's not technically finished yet, but I have like an entire left tattoo sleeve on my arm devoted to like some of my favorite stories, some of them books, some of them TV shows, some of them movies. So and I used to do like theater and stuff a lot when I was younger, and I just love stories and characters. I'm big on characters. So anyways, and I'm also really passionate about sex and BDSM. So it's going to be kind of I think it's pretty clear that this is something that I like discussing if you like to nerd out about stuff like that. And so we get to kind of discuss depictions of kink in the media. And so what I did, I've got Peter Tupper. He's not actually, to my knowledge, here with us right now because he has a job. Like a lot of people have like a normal hour job, and are not always able to be here live, which is also why, by the way, the show is also available on Spotify and SoundCloud. If you want just something for audio later, if you want to watch and listen later, this also automatically goes on my YouTube channel. So just look me up on YouTube if you're not already there. And There you go. So you can watch the show later if you're not able to while it's live. But of course, I love live because we can actually have like in real time discussion about things. So for any questions or comments, I love it. I love it. This is what I love to do. So don't be afraid to, whatever it is, if it's just a comment or a thought or a question, like let's get into it, as long as you are obviously respectful and not like super rude to people, then we're good. So because Peter couldn't actually be here in person, what we did was we did like a Zoom interview and we recorded it, and then I've got some clips here of stuff of some of our interviews that I could just air here and also be live, and so at any time I can pause and we can just discuss. So yeah, wish me luck. Hopefully this goes well. But so Peter Tupper, he's a longtime good friend. He and I have both been very openly in the scene, in the BDSM scene. And he also does like he does lectures and stuff like that. And he has written a book. Oh shit, I don't have it on me, but I have it on me in the video. It's called The Lover's Pinch: A Cultural History of Sadomasochism. I love this book. I actually really enjoyed it, and I still like to go back. I've actually have some bookmarked spots because I do that. So do recommend the book. He's currently writing another book specifically about depictions of kink in media. He doesn't know when it's going to be out because he's not done writing it, so we don't have an actual date. But yeah, so I'm just going to pull this up and let's see how this goes. Get started. Hang on, we are here. Wait, bye. Not yet. Okay, cool. So this is, I guess, how it'll work. There's two me's. And yeah, I know people say whenever I do something different with my hair, I look totally different. Brendan calls me a hair chameleon, which I'm cool with. I kind of like it. I like changing up my look. So anyways, here we go. I'm just going to start playing. If you want a question, go for it. And I can always pause. Let's just on Sex with Robin on Split Radio. And I'm here with Peter Tupper of mine and writer of A Lover's Pinch: Cultural History of Sadomasochism, which is really good. And I actually, Peter, I discovered a problem with your book. I must have ordered it online because it's not signed.
Oh,
I know.
Well,
that
we'll
is a travesty. I would love, thank you. I would so be honored for you to sign this for me. It's a really good book.
Sure.
And like I was mentioning before we started, I've bookmarked certain parts that I really like. So great book, highly recommend. You can get it on Amazon, right?
Oh, definitely.
Where else can you get it?
Barnes and Noble, the usual online retailers, Chapters Indigo. If
That's
you're in
awesome.
Vancouver,
Congrats.
If you're in Vancouver, you can get it at Little Sisters or at The Art of Loving.
Yeah. I've seen yours at The Art of Loving too. I've seen our books side by side, honestly, and I was like, cool. Look, it's so cool. Yeah. So yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, other than being the writer of this book, or even what you do?
Well, I've been involved in the Vancouver kink scene for 20 plus years. I've done a lot of research into history of SM, been an organizer, educator, writer. About the current project I'm working on is called it the Celluloid Dungeon. And it's going to be about kink, how it's depicted in mainstream media, film, television, and video games. And I want to, and I think that's and I'm building on sort of the work of Vito Russo, who wrote a book called The Celluloid Dungeon back in the 80s, which was this really encyclopedic, no, sorry, did I say Celluloid Dungeon? I meant Celluloid Closet, which is a book about the role of queer people in film, and also about a book called Alternate Channels by, I believe, Stephen Capsuto, who was surveying depiction of queer people in television, mostly American television. And I think there's something I wanted to explore that. And I think that, and I've, turned up some interesting stuff along the way. I think that is really important today, since we get so much of our information about the world from the mainstream media.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually on the show, or even just in my regular daily life, the topic comes up, at least with me, all the time. I know you've seen, we talk on the show, like shows come up and how things are depicted. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're definitely the expert on this, but would you say that 50 Shades of Grey really exploded the amount of kink that they're trying to kind of show in media? Like, did you see a major growth of attempted depictions of BDSM? And if you did, do you think it was in a positive or negative way?
Okay.
We all know how you and I both feel about 50
Okay.
Shades. We all know.
Well, let's not, I don't think we need to beat that particular dead horse anymore, but
No.
um, I think that like 50 Shades came along at a kind of an interesting point in film history, because in American film, there's a lot less sex than there used to be. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to, like, like a lot of films are made with eyes to the foreign markets, where they're much more like China, where they're much more restrictive about sexuality than they
Mm-hmm,
are
mm-hmm.
here in the States. Maybe also because we've all got like constant streaming hardcore porn at the from whenever we want. So people, it's not like people are going to go to a movie theater to see something they can't see anywhere else.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so a movie that is like supposed to.
Hang on, I wanted to jump in. And look, my lips are done now. um, I, I did want to pause and mention something that I was actually discussing about um, sex in media. This is me like being annoyed because it drives me nuts. Tell me if you feel this, like my mini rant. It bothers me when I see movies that are like or shows that are super violent and like bloody and gory, and there's like no sex in it. I'm like, how? You've heard me say this before. The Walking Dead has so much violence, or other shows like that, where people are like, oh, I can't watch that. It's too violent for me. Like, it's clearly for a mature audience, and there's like no sex. Um, but I wanted to mention, I was complaining about this with some of my friends the other day, because been watching a lot of shows and movies and binging stuff while healing, and I watched a bunch of the kind of like teen dystopian stuff, like Divergent. I'd never seen those. I just watched those, and like, more of like the Hunger Games and whatever. I love the dystopian stuff, and I was like, why is this all PG-13? I know they're based off like teen books, but I want to see more. Like, I love the dystopian stories. Can we see more like grown-up stuff? Like in Divergent, there's a lot of violence and like no sex, like none. Um, and I pointed out, I'm like, okay, well, actually, a lot of like network producers and higher up TV folks do push for PG-13. Fun fact: Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the guys that made South Park, when they made their movie, they were getting pushed for a PG-13 movie, and like, which is hilarious because yeah, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were like, this isn't for kids. This is not a PG-13 show. No, we're not making our movie PG-13. Like, this is not the content for teenagers. But of course, they want more money. And then, of course, Peter brought up more international stuff that is becoming prevalent with the sharing of media, wanting to make sure it can air in other countries that are okay with it, like China. Just really interesting stuff that drives me crazy. But like, those are a lot of the reasons why we do get that, is because um, international stuff, they want to be able to make more. It's all about money, wanting to be able to make more money by sharing and allowing content in other countries, and also wanting PG-13 because teenagers are a demographic that don't have a ton of bills and might actually have some income. So it's all about the money. Just pisses me off. Let's continue. Oh. Oops, wrong one.
To be the big sexual event, it was a bit unusual in the modern day. And I think that there's certainly sparked off a lot of imitators. There's like the 365 days, I believe what is it, Italian or something? And even the Asylum, the people who made the Sharknado movies, like the Mockbusters.
Oh,
Yeah, they made
yeah.
a movie called,
Unfortunately, I do.
yeah,
No shame.
they made a movie called Bound, which is not to be confused with the
Okay.
Wachowskis from the lesbian noir thriller from the 90s.
Right,
They,
right. Okay. That's
yeah,
the one I'm familiar with.
yeah, they made a movie called Bound, which stars Charisma Carpenter from Buffy and Angel, and
Nice.
she plays a woman who gets involved in SM. Um, so I think there's certainly like people, imitation is the sincerest form of making a quick buck.
In Hollywood, it is, that's for
Yeah,
sure. Or,
but I think
capitalism.
but I think there's certain ways of talking about it that, like going way back, Gail Rubin, she was like one of the, I believe she was a sociologist? Anyway, she was a theoretician, academic scholar who wrote about what she called the charmed circle. And inside the charmed circle is the right kind of sex: heterosexual, monogamous, vanilla, indoors. Okay. No. You don't have to cringe every time you hear that.
That hurts.
And outside, not for profit, and outside, and so outside that charmed circle is all the wrong kind, which is gay, non-monogamous,
Right.
casual, money involved, etc. And so what I think is that it's not so much that the circle is expanded, it's more that the boundary is redrawn in a way that allows certain things inside the circle, but it still has to set up and police that border. So I think that what 50 Shades did, and its various imitators did, is that it sort of emphasizes the idea that kink is okay for white, upper middle class, heterosexual, male dominant, female submissive. So what I think it is it's kind of kink bleached from any sort of subversive qualities. It's not, it's very sort of acceptable to the mainstream. And I think the real thing that started this was Secretary. And that I think Secretary had to walk so 50 Shades could run. Secretary, they had that sequence where Lee she's having her kink relationship with Mr. Gray. And there's a sequence in which she tries meeting other people. And they're all freaks. And it's like, it's almost trying to say that. So Lee and Mr. Gray's relationship, which is this sort of very normative, very private, very outside in private sphere, out of the public sphere, that is okay. That's what kink is. But all this other stuff, whether it's fetishistic or male submissive, female dominant, that's all wrong. That's all incompatible with romance. And that's what I think is the danger, that's what I think is the slippery danger of 365 days of 50 Shades, is that it says that kink is okay if you've got all this other stuff. It's okay for that. If not, but no female dominant, male submissive, no queerness, no pegging, no certainly no non-monogamy, certainly no kink, public play, stuff like that. So I think is that's the divide. It's redrawing that boundary between, to make a certain type of kink acceptable, but really demonizing others.
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. That makes absolute sense. I had a thought. I've actually been watching recently, which is especially heavy considering everything that's happening, especially in the United States. I've been watching The Handmaid's Tale. Have you seen or read? I read them. I read the book, and now I'm watching the show. I just started it, and spoilers. It's like season 1 or season 2. Um, there's a scene, and it kind of develops into the storyline where, of course, in their culture in this story, there's no sex allowed unless it is specifically for procreation, and it has to be with like a commander and a handmaid, etc. And then this commander, this very high powered man, takes his handmaid to a club with all of these high powered men, and it's essentially, you can tell it's kind of fetishy. It's definitely like a sexy party. There's people that are topless, and they're sex workers, except they're forced.
Yeah, coerced.
Very much coerced sex workers. And it just had me thinking, I swear this was just last night I was watching, and I was like, this is relevant because it does show the reality of the hypocrisy, especially in like powerful white men that are really not condoning certain behaviors and then going and doing it. And so there was that relevance, but part of me kind of felt icky because the reaction and the response to this like kind of risque, sexy party was that it was like this really shocking and kind of immoral. And I had really mixed feelings on it. Are you familiar with like this scene? And like, what are your thoughts in terms of how that was depicted? Because clearly it's sending a message of the hypocrisy of these men, but it's also, I felt like it was a little shamey of those private parties, but I mixed emotions. I'm still processing.
Yeah, I mean, like you and I have both been involved in play parties and fetish parties and things like that. So we're used to the idea that sex doesn't have to be in private, monogamous, etc. So I do think that was, I do think that was, I see your point that it does seem to be sort of shaming, like this is decadent and bad. I mean, it's
right?
Bad in that, these women are coerced into doing this, and
Yeah.
it's a testament to the hypocrisy of this regime.
Yeah.
Which I guess is typical for, people. There's a saying that those who make the rules aren't bound by them. So there's always exceptions if you have enough privilege, the Roy Cohn principle. So
actually, I'm sorry, that brings up, we weren't going to go too into your book, but now that just brings me back to the quote that I had already had highlighted here.
Yeah.
In your book, chapter 9, The Velvet Underground, they reflected the anxiety men felt about the idea of the liberated woman simultaneously drawn to them and fearful of them, which is, before the show, I was saying, we used to say in the stripper world that men like to point their finger with one hand and jerk off with the other.
Yeah, I think so.
I think maybe that was more the message that was there, but there was a part of me that felt icky, which you're supposed to feel icky watching that scene. But yeah, I was like, why is everyone acting like this is like the lowest of the low? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the book, and Margaret Atwood made a point that the glamour of Jezebels, which is the name of the club they go to, the glamour of Jezebels is paper thin. So you get this initial impression of glamour, and then you look past that and you see like, everybody's kind of depressed, and the costumes are like held together with staples, and the carpeting is bare.
Right.
So it's like
everyone's doing drugs and
I think they should have kept that for the series and not make it look so glamorous. But I think that the point that I think Atwood is trying to say that, I think she's trying to say is that, people who have, people who are bound by, who make the rules aren't bound by them, that they always make exceptions for, especially if you're elite enough, make exceptions for infidelity, for institutionalized brothels, and the Jezebel system is basically just an institutionalized form of that, even if it's not officially.
Right. It's human trafficking. So it's like just very, very superficial glamour.
Yes.
With all the heaviness underneath.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it is trying to, maybe she is trying to make a point of, that we get a lot of very romanticized of the protagonist relationship with her husband and with the driver, and that's sort of seen as the right form of sexuality versus the the sort of public non-monogamous form. And that's, I can see sort of their point. I don't think that she may have been unwittingly saying that, or saying that, forms of public sexuality are necessarily depraved and decadent. I do think, and that is a kind of an unfortunate thing. I do think that it's like it's the quickest way to say, it's almost like the quickest way to say somebody is morally suspect than to associate them with non-monogamy, with strip clubs, with stuff like that.
Right.
There is a prejudice at work there.
There was one thing, I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time since I read the book. I believe this was in the book, but there's a scene in the show where she kind of, the main character kind of walks past a room and she peeks into one of them, and you can see some men in there and some of the Jezebels, or the forced sex workers. And they were like imitating the ceremony. Yeah, where they had but it was like in a sexy kink kind of way. So you saw like someone in a blue dress holding in the ceremony position, and I was like, it made me laugh and cringe at the same time, because I was like, okay, I feel kind of seen in that there are problematic kinks that we can sometimes play with, like sissification, for example, and so my kind of rule has always been like, okay, I feel like you can play with it as long as you can recognize that it's problematic. Yeah. But at the same time, in this scene, I do feel like these are the people that are instilling, the ceremonies, and they're instilling it. So there's the hypocrisy, but it made me be like, whoa, because I can totally see how that would be a kink that would be played upon.
Exactly. Yeah. And I believe in another, that might be the same episode. There's a woman who's missing a hand, and this guy is
yeah.
And this is
licking it and sucking it, and
in which women are punished by having fingers, hands, eyes, tongues,
for reading, for
there is, I think that it would get worked into a lot of so sexuality is and anxiety have a very peculiar relationship, and we find, I think a lot of it, and it's hard to, you do feel a little uncomfortable because people have amputee fetishism, and we don't want to kink shame, but this is also
not at all
in which mutilation is part of the regime of punishment.
And again, one of those clients would have been someone who was very strongly a huge part of instilling those problems and those punishments. So that's where the major hypocrisy comes in, for sure. But it was one of those things where I was actually really surprised that they had that on film. I was like, wow, because that really dives into the deep end of kink in terms of like problematic play, quote unquote, things that are problematic in real life, but something you can play with, like even consensual non-consent or rape play kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we there's always awkward, especially when you're dealing with like race play, age play.
Yeah,
get into very difficult, emotionally fraught areas, and I think that again, this is kind of like trying to show that this is depraved. This goes back to like the Nazi exploitation I talk about in my book. The Catholic, it's like Gilead is a society that breeds this kind of perversion. So I think that these little scenes get worked in, and for the appeal, and then the fans decontextualize them and sort of collage them together into these compilations and lists. And I think this goes way back.
I would argue fan fiction is a big part of that, right? Like
that's another
something that you find right.
Yeah, and like 50 Shades was originally Twilight fan fiction, obviously, as everybody most people know these days. I am looking forward to what comes next. I'm hoping that we can see better representation and more honest exploration of kink and non-normative sexualities in mainstream to come.
Mm-hmm. All right, last question. What is it that you would want to see next? What do you think is really important to show in media next? Or like, what would you need to see? What do you want
I'd
to see
like
right
to
now?
see a female dominant, male submissive relationship that's a happy ending.
What? Is that a big ask? I don't think that's a big ask at
I
all,
think it
but
is.
apparently it is.
It's hard to find it's hard to
Exactly. All right, so anyone listening that has any involvement, we do need to see that. We need to see that, and I'll have it be a punchline. I've discussed that in previous shows, and I have a whole workshop on that about how like a lot of times femme presenting dominance are depicted as a punchline, and oftentimes the mask bottom is also depicted as a total punchline and something to be, humiliated or laughed at. And I'm like, come on, let's see them be like normal people.
Yep. Weirdly
and a
enough,
happy ending. That would be good. That'd be good.
That scene in Family
You have to have conflict. They always want conflict in a movie, right?
But it's weirdly enough, it's that scene in Family Guy where they're dressing up in fetish wear, and they're also talking about they're worried about their kids and drugs. And I thought,
yeah,
perhaps by accident, this kind of like, if this is what a couple who does kink would talk about while getting ready for a scene, they would be talking about their concerns about their kids. So by accident, aiming for humor, they ended up in sort of a more realistic depiction.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for coming on the show. And I know that your time, and of course, time doesn't always match up. So I'm really thankful that we were able to put something together. And basically what I want to do is show it, and people watching live can have questions that would go in the comments, and I can poke you. And if you want to be able to see what the comments are, if you do have questions for Peter, you will come and see the comments and answer some questions once it's been posted. Yes. And I'll be there too. I'll be in the comments as well. So yeah, thank you again for coming. And I know we're not supposed to talk about your book, but I really do recommend it to others. I'll plug your book. I do love it. A Lover's Pinch, A Cultural History of Sadomasochism. I found it to be a really great read. And I'm so looking forward to your next book as well. Fingers crossed, sooner rather than later, but I get it. We'll have to wait.
Yeah. And I'm still blogging at historyofbdsm.com. Yes,
thank you. Where else can people find you, or are you on the social medias?
Hunt around Facebook and Twitter. They're very touchy about this kind of stuff on Instagram, I've found.
All right, there you have it. That is the interview with Peter Tupper and I, and that was really great chatting with him. I had actually a lot more material, but I had to edit it down, and I actually have time left, so yay. But I was also anticipating, needing to pause to discuss, but I just feel like he says it all. The Handmaid's Tale, that was one I was really, and still am, fascinated by. I had binged it all, and I'd read the book, but I hadn't really seen much of it until recently. So I've been getting really into it, and yeah, a lot of feels. And I honestly just want to rewatch it now that I know like more of what happens on the show and stuff like that. I feel like rewatching things. Let me know. I love rewatching stuff, especially if it's really thought-provoking. Because I love to watch everything at least twice. I'll watch it once to like kind of enjoy it and think, and then I'll watch it again to like really okay, I am that person. I'm so sorry if you're not, but be warned, because like no shame either way. I'm the kind of person that likes to pause a show or a movie and be like, wait, can we just talk about that for a second? So there are people that hate that, and there are people that love that. So if you're one of those people that love that, we will do well watching things together. My wife and I, we both do that. We have like an unspoken rule that at any time either one of us could be like, wait, pause, and it could just be for a quick pee break, but usually it's like, okay, we can we talk about that, or like, oh, that line, or we'll want to watch it again, be like, wait, go back, I want to see that line again. Which is one of the reasons I actually really don't like going to the movie theater. I know, I'm sorry, people are like, a lot of people that are passionate about movies and TVs are like, oh, the magic of the theater, and I love it, but no, I want to be able to go pee when I got to go pee. I want to have like a smorgasbord of snacks, and I want to be able to pause and go, wait. I'm also not good at sitting still. So to be able to like move around and have my own space. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on kink and media? Are there any particular shows or movies that you feel are really good? What are your thoughts, if you're okay going into it? I really truly like want to know. I love discussing this shit. So what are your thoughts on the Handmaid's Tale and that whole Jezebel scene? And keep in mind, the Jezebels, as they're called, the sex workers, are forced, like heavily coerced, forced. They don't have really much say in being there. So there is that, but that's the whole point, like the hypocrisy of what Peter was saying, that the rules apply to everyone except for those that basically instilled them. But I was really fascinated and surprised that they did air some of the stuff, like the amputee fetishism, which is like no shame. It's a real thing. It's not an uncommon fetish, but that was on TV. I was like, whoa. You don't see that very often. And the whole, I do love that they showed that kind of fetishy scene of the ceremony, because that does speak volumes in terms of the hypocrisy of those instilling those issues. But I'm also like, let's be real. In this regime, that would totally be a kink, and I would not be surprised if that I wouldn't be surprised to hear that play has happened in real life. I would not be surprised if you could go online and find like kinky Handmaid Tale sexy Halloween costumes or something like that people role play with. Guarantee you. And so if you have, no shame. It's just, I find it so fascinating. The very complex relationship that people have with kink. So, and yes, these are real. These are real blades. This is actually real. I can even take off the little sheath. They're sheaths because they are actually sharp. My little earrings, they have these little butcher knives on them, and they are actually quite sharp. I saw them, I wish I remembered the name of the people or the business. I saw them at Con and Kink Fest, and I was like, I am not allowed to leave here without these. I don't have a lot of money, but these are mine, and I have to get them. Yeah. So thanks so much for watching. Your thoughts on, we discussed Handmaid's Tale, of course, and just in general, certain depictions in media in this idea of, especially with the more modern kind of era of media, okay, 50 Shades of Grey, or that 365 Days, other shows like that it's like, okay, well, you can have, because I know these conversations happen. These conversations happen in boardroom meetings with all media, where they break everything down with ratings. Okay, how many times are you allowed to say fuck? How many times are you allowed to say it? Like a PG-13 usually gets like one fuck. And sometimes, so you're watching like a PG-13 movie and you're like, you wasted your fuck on that? Or sometimes it's really awesome. They really do break it down. Are we allowed to show, XYZ? Are there going to be any boobs? Are there going to be any asses? And that kind of thing. So I am encouraged that there's an increase in what they call intimacy coaches. Like someone like myself would do this. where you help the actors feel comfortable with each other, because kind of before the Me Too movement, it was literally just like in a script, these two have sex, and they'd be like, okay, go. So the actors were not usually given any instructions or like practice or discussion over how the scene is going to go, and that can obviously lead to some serious messes and coercion and stuff like that. So nowadays you're seeing more and more professionals coming in to film situations where they're helping the actors with certain sex scenes, or physically intimate scenes, and helping them feel comfortable, and actually like even rehearsing and stuff, where they never used to do that, and that's kind of becoming a thing now. So yay. There is progress to be made, but again, they're sitting in the boardroom and discussing these things. And so what Peter is talking about is the fact that it's like, okay, there's a circle of like what's okay. So when you see kink depicted on these things, there were discussions. Okay, are we going to show some tying up? Are we going to show some blindfolding? Okay, but it's got to be only a short scene, or you can't actually show the slapping. You have to maybe just show someone's face. And so it becomes they're having to actually narrow down what is okay and what's not. And unfortunately, the things that they're saying, okay, heterosexuality is okay. Well, it's okay if they're married. Okay, but they have to be white and attractive and in a male dominant and all this other stuff. And it's really frustrating. So what do we need to see? I asked Peter that question. What do you want to see more of? And maybe I'll leave this as like the last question. I got a bunch of questions I've asked. Please throw your thoughts or questions in the comments, and I'll come back to them if it's after the airing. But what do you want to see more of in terms of kink depictions? I am getting really tired personally of seeing very conventionally attractive white people. So like thin white people, basically. I'm really tired of seeing that. I want to see more body shapes. I want to see more colors and more skin tones and more experiences, instead of rich, thin white people. Show some reality, please. And of course, okay, this is also what I really want to see. I want to see kink depicted in a way that doesn't end in disaster. or that doesn't end in the happy ending that is, okay, no more kink, we're fixed and normal now. Fuck that. I want to see a family, and maybe you have like the parents involved in a BDSM relationship, and that could be interesting, right? But let's not see it end in disaster. Too many times I see it either the relationship ends in disaster, or there's no kink anymore, because now we have a perfect healthy relationship, and that really pisses me off. So yes, let's see kinky people in a more realistic setting, like maybe not just, and yes, there are a lot of, I would say, more privileged people, more white people that in the kink scene, in the out kink scene, and that's due to privilege. Maybe they have more time or money, maybe they have less to lose in terms of being outed. It's a privilege thing for sure, which I should say also, the book Love's Not Colorblind by Kevin A. Patterson, fucking top notch. Highly recommend. It is a very good book. Oh yeah, it's called Love's Not Colorblind, Race and Representation in, is it non-monogamy or something like that? I'm trying to remember the secondary title, but it's basically what it is. It's really good. Highly recommend. But that's what I want to see. I want to see a little more realistic. Maybe it doesn't end in disaster. It doesn't have to be a completely happy story, because obviously people want conflict, they want tension to make a story interesting, but a happy ending would be nice. Happy ending for the kinky people. Happy ending for the gay people. Happy ending for people of color. I don't know. Is that a big ask? It shouldn't be. Excuse me. So before I sign off, I have to tell you my toy of the week. I think I've actually done this one before. Just looking for it on adamandeve.com. I actually have the toy with me. I was just looking for a link. Where is it? Here we go. Go to adamandeve.com, SWR for 50% off almost anyone free. No. 50%, as in half off almost any one item and free shipping. Because a lot of the time, I'm actually teaching the kids this right now. Because they're like, look, I found this online and I have enough money for it. And I'm like, that's awesome. What's shipping? And it's usually costs more than the thing they want. So they're learning the sad reality of that. But if you use this promo code, whether you're in Canada or the US, free shipping plus half off almost any one item. And so here's the item that I'm really liking. And I'm missing it because I haven't used it in forever. Because again, I cannot put anything inside of my vagina for another 4 weeks. As of tomorrow will be 4 weeks after my hysterectomy. So I'm like at the halfway mark tomorrow. But this is what I have. It's actually a thrusting toy. I'm trying to find the name of it on this site, but you can get it from Adam and Eve. And this one is advertised as like one of the deeper thrusting ones, because you can get like thrusting dildos that maybe move like in and out just a little bit, which is great. But this one goes quite deep. I was really quite impressed, and I'm usually afraid I'm gonna like break them or something, but this one feels pretty sturdy. It wasn't super quiet, but it wasn't super loud either, if that makes any sense. So like, yeah, there's a mechanical sound, and I was kind of like, okay, they could go quieter, but you know what? Under the blanket, it was enough to muffle the sound, and I use a fan. So I haven't used this yet in a long time, and I'm excited to use it again when I can in 4 more weeks. It is a thrusting toy, and it's purple, and it's silicone, so it's super easy to clean, and yeah, it's rechargeable. I like it. Go check it out, adamandeve.com. Promo code SWR for 50% off almost any one item, and that means most of them. There's a couple items that might give you like only 30% off, which I'm like, okay, that's still cool. If you have the time, you can search for a similar toy that's half off, but usually most of the toys are a good half off, or at least 30-35% off, which is a fucking stupid awesome deal. So go for it. Use that code SWR and you'll save a ton of money, and you can get yourself a nice toy, because I know it's hard to justify buying an expensive toy, and I am getting more and more toys all the time using my own promo code because it's an awesome deal. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. What do you want to see in mainstream media? What do you want to see depicted? And of course, what are your thoughts on some of the stuff that we've discussed? Thanks again to Peter Tupper. Always has something really intelligent and thoughtful to say. He's a total nerd, and I'm super into that. It's awesome. Oh, hey, Robin. Hi. I'm just closing up now, but hi. Leave your comments, even though I'm signed off. I'll still be on here. And of course, don't forget, this will be available within the next hour. It'll be up on SoundCloud and Spotify, so you can listen to that anywhere you go if you want to just catch up on a later episode, or you can check out YouTube where the video's down if you actually want to watch. Other than that, I love you all. Don't forget, if your loved ones and your family doesn't support you or accept you for who you are, I am your family now. I love you all. Mwah. See you next week. Bye.